This is Marco Palmero, founder of Ulysses. Today we're going to be talking about qualifying motivated sellers. Very important subject. How do you move people from the initial consideration phase to an engaged seller? I think this is a very important topic. A lot of people skip this, miss on the opportunity of closing very good deals. Even experienced private equity groups and investment bankers still don't understand this concept. So if you're one of them, check out this video and watch it till the end, because I'm going to show you some of the core mistakes that people are making, even some of your competitors, that you can avoid so that you can win more mandates and win more deals. And this is, again, based on some of the kind of like behaviors that we spotted when working with dozens of clients across the globe, sourcing hospital deals, manufacturing facilities, SaaS companies, you name it. Literally every business that you can think of, we sourced across different geographies. Go check our case studies on the site if you want to see more about that. But let's talk about this concept, because a lot of times I spend most of these videos talking about the way you initiate the conversation. So how you originate deals, how you build your pipeline, how you create initial interest, and how you source off-market deals that are less competitive in nature. And that is because, again, that's what we do mostly, how we help people get more deal flow, more acquisitions, but also because it's probably the biggest opportunity right now with competition growing and a lot of folks entering the market, but just focusing on deals that are available and accessible. It becomes important to differentiate yourself and having a proprietary pipeline. And that's ultimately what we help people do. But what happens when you do get these opportunities? How do you interact with these sellers so that they can ultimately materialize into deals? Because a lot of times I see folks that say, well, we tried off-market origination in the past and it didn't work, or the leads, the prospects that we were talking to were not qualified. And every single time I get that statement, I want to first go a little bit deeper to understand the reason behind it. But in most instances, what I end up with is the conclusion that these folks didn't understand the type of prospects they were interacting with. And they were just treating this person as somebody that already made a decision to exit. It was ready with everything in place to move on and move forward. And he was ultimately ready to rock and roll. But that is not the case. And this is a clear distinction that you must be aware of. It doesn't matter if you're a managing director at a private equity firm, if you're an analyst. This is so key, because it will dramatically change the way you approach deal origination and will skyrocket your results, independently of whether you work with me, with somebody else. Good luck if you work with somebody else. But anyways, let's talk about pipeline qualification. By the way, I got the little espresso going in a very Italian fashion. No offense to you Americans, I love you. Live in America for a long time, but your coffee is kind of terrible, right? Especially for an Italian. And I always say that if you drink your coffee with sugar, you don't like coffee, you like sugar. And that's just the bottom line. You should always want to have an espresso that is short and no sugar in it, so you can enjoy it. And it needs to hurt a little bit, right? That's the whole point of having coffee. If it's just sweet, you might just have a soda or something. But anyways, the problem that a lot of people face when they originate off-market deals is that they think of these sellers as companies that already made a decision to sell and are already ready to act. And that is incorrect. It is incorrect for a variety of different reasons. Well, first of all, because when you originate deals off-market, you're going to get a variety of different people into your funnel. There's going to be people that are ready now, people that would be ready in 3 to 4 months, people that are going to be ready in 6, and people that are going to be ready in 12 or more. And so the first problem that people face is that they put everybody in one category, and they use the same metrics, the same measures to evaluate all these opportunities. And then they say 80% of them are shit. Well, in reality, that's not the case. It's just that you're using the wrong measures. Now, once we understand that, then we need to analyze, okay, So if that is the case, how is it that we can interact with people that come into our funnel in a different manner? Well, first of all, we've got to create a very layered process to categorize these folks so that we understand where they are in their decision-making process and what's their level of readiness. That enables us to then communicate with them in the best possible way so that we have a chance of converting them later when they ultimately become ready. Now, it might sound too simplistic, but I see a lot of folks not doing this, especially, again, private equity groups, people that have tons of money. And then they come to me and say, well, deal flow is not abundant, or we don't have a lot of opportunities, and they're all very competitive. And I'm like, yeah, first reason for that is because you're just waiting for somebody to send you a sim, and you're only looking at 18% of the market. I mean, there's data about that. You can go check PwC or Deloitte. I don't remember. They did a research about it, and they showed that basically private equity groups on average see 18% of the available deals on any market. So you're leaving 80% of the money on the table, just FYI. But let's just assume you understand that concept, and so you are targeting that 80% that is left, and you want to find off-market deals. Then you cannot treat these folks the same way you would treat a prospect that comes in with a sim or that has been sourced by an investment banker, because these guys already went through a process of qualification. They've been screened by the investment banker. The sim has been prepared. The documents, they've been, kind of like put together. And so there's a package, and there's been a preparation that probably went on for, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 6 months, whatever. So you are, in essence, comparing warm prospects with cold prospects. And that's a terrible mistake, because again, you're going to try to do things that don't work with cold prospects, and they're not going to work. And ultimately, you're going to say, well, off-market deals don't work. But that's not the case. It's just that your methodology and your approach towards these prospects was incorrect, and the strategy behind it was just built backwards. So when we originate off-market deal flow, as I said, there are going to be different types of people that you get in contact with. First, most important thing, understanding where they are in their decision-making cycle. 2, what's important to them. How is it that we can become relevant to them quickly? Because again, especially if we're in the US, there are a ton of people that are going to be reaching out to these folks. A lot of them are going to be undifferentiated simply because they're lazy and entitled. And so how can we make ourselves different from these folks so these business owners say, oh, this guy actually thinks like he knows what he's talking about, and then solidify that relationship over time. That's second step. Once we got that, then it becomes a question of how we structure the communication with this prospect so that every time we get in contact with him and the readiness is maturing, there's a reinforcement of the idea that he should be doing business with us. I don't care if you're an advisor and he wants to engage you as a sales side kind of like representation, or if you're a private equity group and he wants to sell his business to you. You need to have a clear track towards closing. And again, it sounds simplistic, it sounds obvious, but nobody does it. So, I mean, I need to repeat that because, again, I'll be honest here, and again, I don't want to piss off anybody, but if I do, I don't care. That's entitlement thinking. Just because you're a big private equity group with a flashy name on the door and tons of capital available, it doesn't mean that people should come to you and bend over backwards to sell their business, because in most cases, these people are going to be making a life-changing decision, and it is fair for them to consider a variety of different things that might be more or less important to them before they actually pull the trigger. It's entitlement thinking for us to think and assume that these people are going to be implicitly willing to sell to us just because we're so special, we're so good, us. That's just incorrect. And we want to work our way around it. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to be looking like a little bitch that does everything the seller wants to do. That's not what I'm saying. So if you've got that perception, that's not the case. What I'm trying to say is that we want to remove all the obstacles that are preventing these sellers from moving in the direction that we want them to move so that they ultimately get to the point where they are ready to exit and they interact with us. So what are all the things that we can do to remove friction so that once people get to that finish line, we close a deal? Because ultimately that's what we're interested in, right? So why being entitled and being lazy about a process when you can actually fix a few things, make it very efficient, and ultimately get more deals over the line? So again, private equity groups, investment bankers are very lazy about this process. They treat everybody like it's, oh, if you're not ready now, then just call me when you're ready. And then they never follow up with them again. Or just they send them a sloppy email every now and then. Well, dude, I mean, they're not going to get back to you. And the problem with that is that they're going to go with somebody that maybe is less experienced than you are or less capable than you are just because they were lucky enough to find them when they ultimately made the decision. And that's kind of like such a shame, don't you think? It's like, you got in front of this person, maybe not at the right time, that's okay. How can we nurture that relationship so that when he's ready, he goes with us 100% of the times and nobody can steal that deal from us? So it's about building up an infrastructure, a system that nurtures these people. And I understand that, from your perspective, it might be something that is very time consuming and there are other priorities on your to-do list, like working on active mandates, closing active deals. And so these things take the backseat. But it doesn't mean that they are less important and you shouldn't be taking care of them. And there's a way to automate part of that, a way to outsource part of that. But the point is, that's where you actually build a pipeline that is consistent over time. You never hit a dry spell every now and then, and you have consistency over time, because as you create this repeatable process, then people start to come back to you more often. And so you don't only capture that portion of the market that is ready now, but you're capturing also the maybe laters, maybe in 6 months, maybe in 12 months, and then you move them across the stages so that they ultimately mature and get in contact with you. Again, entitlement thinking, that's a very interesting concept. And I think the problem around that is, again, that people are lazy about that and maybe they have other priorities. I understand it. But if you really want to make more money and do more deals, you cannot skip these steps. Now, you can fix the process by yourself. You can have somebody build it and run it for you, like us. That I don't really care about. But if you want more deals and you want a predictable way of getting more deals that are less competitive because they come from off-market origination, then this is the way of doing things. And it kind of like fixes that process of person comes in, deal closes. What happens in between? Because again, people say, okay, I got a bunch of interest, then nobody moved forward, so it's impossible to find deals off market. No, man, is that all the people that came in initially with initial interest were qualified in the wrong way, were talked to in the wrong way, or they were met with the wrong message at the wrong time, and therefore they turned cold. And that's the only issue. Because if somebody shares an interest, unless if it's a clear tire kicker, and of course, it's easy for us or you to detect if somebody's just kicking tires. But unless he's doing that, then it becomes a question of, okay, we need to build this conversation in the right way. And again, I'll give you an example. We had a client that we've been working with, we were sourcing deals for him, and we nurture relationships with people that weren't actually ready. But in 5 months' time, they came back to him. This guy was an investment banker, by the way. And they said, listen, I've been thinking about the conversation. The exchange has been very productive, and especially based on some of the things that you said, I think I would be interested in engaging now. I think I'm ready to move forward. It was actually a few weeks ago because we're after tax season. It's April now. And the interesting thing that came out, and this is the most important part, is that he said, based on the fact that we had this continuous relationship, I felt confident enough to initiate this process. And I'm going to tell you more. I decided I want to sell both of my businesses, and it came out that he had two businesses, and so I would want to engage with you with both of them. Now I don't recall how much and EBITDA they were generating, but I guess we're talking about probably around 8 to 10 million total enterprise value, the two businesses combined. So nothing too fancy, but still that relationship was built and developed over time, and it led to one, multiple deals, that's huge, and two, a person coming back and deciding to engage. But that would have never happened if we didn't have a system in place to nurture that initial maybe, or I would consider it, into an actual sale. Because again, what would have happened is this person would have gone in different directions and then ultimately decided to maybe go to his buddy because nobody else seems trustworthy. Another case, we had a kind of like a firm that was basically struggling with information and data collection. They were trying to centralize their data to prepare for an exit, and they felt the time was right for them, but they weren't actually there with the data. So they felt that would take a long time for them to put together. And most people would have just passed on that and said, yeah, well, when you got the information, just email me back. And they would have lost the deal, because what happened is we stayed in touch, and we also shared some valuable information about how they could potentially put the data together in an effective way. And what happened is 3-4 months later, I guess, they came back, and then turned out to be a deal that one of our clients is currently negotiating. It's 2 million EBITDA, 10 million total valuation, I guess, more or less. It's going to close around that price. And so these are just two examples to give you context around the process that goes from maybe, yes, initial interest to a closed relationship. It's delusional to think that just because you reached out one time, somebody is going to hand over the business to you. Either it doesn't matter if it is a sales side engagement or an actual sale. So we need to build that process. And again, you can do it by yourself. We can do it for you, but you need to do it, because otherwise you're going to be ending up every single year in the same position you've always been, saying, well, it will be good to have more deals. But we have our network of partners that bring us opportunities. We have our investment bankers or our brokers that bring us deals, and that's good enough for now. But it would be good to have more. Yeah, if you keep doing these things and you don't change anything, you're going to get the same result the year after. And in some cases, results might even get worse because competition is rising. And despite the fact there are a lot more deals that are coming out, especially in the lower middle market, there are a lot of people that want to buy these assets, and a lot of dry powder that is sitting there untouched, ready to be deployed. And so if you keep doing what everybody else is doing, you're going to get what everybody else is getting. And in most instances, that's not much. So if you want better outcomes, you need to think differently and ultimately take these steps that enable you to unlock deals almost out of nowhere, really. Because the point that I'm trying to make here is that I'm not saying that we need to do exceptionally more work, because that's not the case. A lot of stuff can be automated. There's AI that we can put in the mix. But the point is, we need to think strategically about the different positions of every seller that we interact with, where they're starting from, and how can we take them from that position to the sale position in a very effective manner. And how can we remove all the obstacles that are going to be in their way in order to get them to a final decision. And I'm going to give you just a tiny example that is kind of like stupid, but I think it gets my point across. We ultimately sourced a deal once, and we were in the process of booking a conversation with one of our clients. And generally we book calls on their behalf, so the entire process is handled by us. But in that case, the client wanted us to double confirm because they had a busy schedule, so we couldn't automatically book for them. And what was interesting is that we connected the parties, the client started interacting with the seller, and then what the fuck do? They drop a calendar link in the email and they say, yeah, feel free to pick up a time to talk together. Or another thing that happened one time was like, feel free to send me an invite. And they said that to the seller. Now, I'm not saying that you should, again, kind of like help this person with anything he needs and kind of like bend over backwards to be at service. But that sounds like a very stupid thing to do. You're about to engage with a person that wants to have an interaction about selling his business for millions, and you are gonna ask him to do more effort to book a call. Of course he's not gonna book a call. People are lazy, and they're more lazy than you are. And so in that case, in fact, the call never happened. Why? Not because the person was not interested, but because it was turned off by the way the interaction was handled. That's why, by the way, in most cases, we handle that part because we are very good at that, so we avoid these types of issues. But the point is, those are tiny things. They're not difficult to fix. And in most cases, they make a huge difference because, again, that's, again, an obstacle that we're removing from the sale process. If we take care of all the booking for the seller and he not just needs to confirm he received the invite, the likelihood that he's going to show up on the call are much higher because we removed all the friction before. And then the likelihood that it's going to be easier to talk with are much higher. So again, that's just a stupid example because there are more complex things that we can talk about. But the point is, the steps from initial interest of off-market deals to closed deals are more sophisticated than people think. And in most cases, people treat warm opportunities the same as cold opportunities, and that's just incorrect. There's money to be made with off-market deals, but people need to understand how to treat them properly, how to classify them, how to talk with people at different stages correctly, and how to create a system that ultimately delivers outcomes. If you know how to do it, go ahead and execute. If you don't know how to do it, we can do it for you. There's going to be links below that you can check out. And that's basically it.